Read about how many Ramanujan that Ramanujan has died or was neglected, and he reproved about 1/3 of his number theory, of the number theory that the world has proved. He reproved that, third of that. If he had the access to number theory and he had proper education, he would not have wasted his life in that endeavor. But what I am worried about is that there are how many Ramanujans in India which couldn't find Hardy. Because it was Hardy, due to him, Ramanujan went to Cambridge and did all that which now we see as a first-class mathematical work. We know all the story of Ramanujan. He wrote 14 theorems, about 14 theorems, sent to various people. Nobody bothered to look at them. Even Hardy did not bother to look at them. And Hardy says, some 2-3 months later, when I was sitting idle in my office at Cambridge, I suddenly realized that there was some piece of paper lying in the waste paper basket sort of thing. So why don't I pick that and try to see what it is? Then he said, and I started trying to look at it more deeply. I found that there were 3-4 results which were wrong. But then there were 3-4 results which were already proven. But then there were the rest of the results which he said I tried to prove, and I find them very difficult to prove. They were correct. But he said that when I realized that person like Hardy, who's well-established number theorist, when he tries to prove those theorems which are correct and he couldn't prove them, this guy must be extraordinary. And that was the step when he decided, that was the moment then he decided to contact Ramanujan. And then he fetched him to Cambridge, and there came, and he did his first degree, tripos, and then BA. He became the youngest FRS from India, and his work with Littlewood also is known as big achievement. He says that how many Ramanujan are there in India which couldn't find Hardy. Same is the situation in Pakistan. There are many Ramanujans, there are many excellent people here, students, but they are unable to find the right person to guide them. The culture is very difficult one, and nowadays it's more so because the students are not given the time, nor they are given the incentive to work on problems which can give them chance to learn mathematics, which can give them chance to produce something worthwhile, which can give them chance to become Ramanujans of their times. Because they are now, due to cultural rapid changes which are unconducive for the sort of research that we are supposed to be doing, that these people are now running after mirages. They are just in some kind of delusions, and they produce something at the same time they do not know that what they have produced is not worthwhile. That kind of social life, that kind of mathematical life has to be changed. Otherwise we will be ruining our future. Thank you very much. This is what I wanted to share. I hope I have not bored you people with these ideas of mine. I can welcome your questions or comments, if you have any.
Please feel free to ask. You won't mind. And try to answer.
How do you think this mathematical life can be changed?
Well, the first responsibility, of course, is on the students. I think we depend too much upon teachers, and we are expecting too much of our teachers. We think that teacher is a magician And within 5 minutes, he can teach you something that you can understand, even though the subject is very difficult. I have seen in my own life, I had the honor of being associated with some outstanding mathematicians. Believe me, when I was their student in the first few months and years even, I used to find myself ignorant of many things. And you get depressions. When you attend a lecture and you see you are unable to understand even 90% of the lecture, you get a depression. And I think that depression is good because it causes you tension and then you strive to learn. But if you don't have that kind of feeling and you always look for somebody for help, you will not be doing things that you are supposed to be doing. And therefore, that is where the learning process stops. If you don't want to learn really, if you depend too much on teachers, you are not indulging in learning. You want to listen something. You want to hear something. You don't want to do yourself something. So you want students forget their own role, which is very important. So I think, first of all, it is the sole responsibility of the students to realize that major part of the lecture, if they can't understand, they have to strive to understand it, rather than expect that teacher will say something and they should immediately understand that. It's a new thing. Teacher who has experience, who is much more qualified, has spent hours trying to understand that lecture, and then he delivers that lecture or she delivers that lecture. How can a student expect that lecture to be understood in half an hour? There is so much effort behind that. So one person's effort maybe can be taken as an incentive, that if that person can work so hard and can put forward information in such a nice way, in such a comprehensive way, why can't we do something to learn that? So the learning process is missing. Hearing, seeing, that is there. So I think once that thing is realized, things will change.
This is something cyclic. Teacher has to motivate somehow that why that thing that he's giving a lecture about is important, and then the student has to work hard to understand how to remove the depression of not understanding the lecture.
We don't go through that tension. We don't go through that tension. We don't go through that depressions. We always find a way out.
Because it is depressing for a teacher as well when the whole class is.
I don't think that. I think that has to be corrected also. The teachers should not be so worried about that, because they should do their job and pass on the information as much as they can in that limited time. But it's up to the students that how much they can benefit from the talk. I think if you know that in order to understand 1 hour's lecture, you have to spend several hours to understand that, really. So if you don't do that part of work, that is your responsibility, how can you understand the lecture? And if you don't understand the lecture, you are just trying to retain the information that you have got for 1 hour. And that information you can forget any time after, as Dale Carnegie says, after 8 hours you will forget that information that you have received in a lecture form. Yes?
At the same time, the teacher has also to give 7 hours to give 1 hour lecture at some status setting. The teacher has also, the same person, the teacher has to give the lecture. So when he is preparing the lecture, he has to give, for example, 6 to 7 hours to give that 1 hour lecture.
To prepare himself for that.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
I mean, it's a both way. For me, it's a both way activity. Because the teacher at the same time is a learner. Because the teacher, it's a two-way
You see,
process.
we might be going a little away from the main thing that I was referring to, is that, for example, in research also, we're not taking the pressure of reading a research paper, doing exhaustive study of various papers, trying to understand the papers, and then absorbing that stuff, and then going for producing something. We are not doing that. As I've been saying in the past to my students, take example of an MPhil student. By law, you are not required to produce a paper out of your dissertation. you have 2 semesters. In 2 semesters, you are supposed to read literature, in the first semester at least, 4 months. And then you have to write a dissertation, which also requires time and effort, especially keeping in mind the fact that dissertation is supposed to be written in English, and we find it difficult to write a dissertation in English, which can put forward, which can contain the stuff that we want to communicate to the reader. So therefore, our dissertation, which is written only in 2 semesters, in 8 months' time, you can imagine how it means that we are so like-fike that we can, within a period of 8 months, we can read such paper, which is a very difficult stuff to do. And then I had the chance to read, I'm sure many others, 1-page paper, if it's a paper written by some good mathematicians, is difficult to understand. It takes a lot of time. How come then you can read a couple of papers, 4 or 5 papers in 1 semester, understand them, and the very next semester you solve the problem, and then you put it form of a dissertation, and at the same time it gets published in such form, in such paper form, in a good journal. One must be a genius. I think there's a time for us to realize that in 4 months you can't do that kind of stuff. So if you want to work on a mathematical problem from any branch of mathematics, you need to read a lot of literature, exhaustive study. Once you understand that, then you can, after having learnt it, then you can produce something. Otherwise, if you are able to produce something, either the production is not worthwhile, or it is something that is done by somebody else. Which means that after that the paper is published, what about the next paper? You will do the same thing. So if this kind of approach prevails for a very long time in a culture, that will breed very negative, adverse results. And we have already gone too far into that direction. A time has come where we must change ourselves and start realizing that this is not going to pay us. This is not going to do any good to us. We have to hold on that stuff that we read for a while and let it be properly understood. Otherwise, just reading a paper and immediately coming out with another paper of a similar kind is ununderstandable, really. That kind of situation is here now. The people are under a lot of tension because of this fast production. असम साहब को मैसेज तो नहीं आया? So this speed is creating a problem. Speed is creating. All right. Thank you. So we wait for the next.